This morning on the program, we're joined by Mr. Wale Adeni, who is a public relations officer for the Nigeria Customs. He joins us from Abuja. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. Well, as you see, there are many who are not exactly happy, to say the least, about this policy. Let's backtrack a little bit. Give us what informs this decision in the first place.
Thank you very much, and good morning, Nigerians. In the last 5 years, revenue from vehicles accounts for about 20% of our yearly revenue. And vehicle is one of the top 3 revenue performers. We have vehicles, we have spare parts, we have electronics, cereals, and stuff like that. But in the last 3-4 years, vehicles have always been consistently in the top 3. Now, since 2014, there has been a progressive decrease in the revenue coming from vehicles. In 2014, we had about 144 billion out of 900 billion. In 2015, it dropped to 120 something billion. And now we are doing just around 86 billion in 2016. So whatever happens to vehicles affects the revenue of Nigeria Customs Service. And we are second after oil. So government has taken a hard look at this. Government has taken a number of steps to arrest this. We have engaged with our colleagues from Republic of Benin to see how we can bring sanity into vehicles that are brought in through the borders. We have seen diversion in the last 3 years, so to speak, and we felt that the best way to address this would be to seek some kind of agreement with Benin Customs. We did. The agreements were made, but we discovered that these agreements were only honored in the breach. So we felt that as a responsible federal government, as a responsible government that is responsive to its national interest, we need to do the needful, and that is to protect our national economic interest.
What was this agreement that we had with Benin Republic?
Principally, it's for Benin Republic to honor agreements that have been signed with them in line with international transit protocols. And I just put it very simply. There are Nigerians who want to bring their vehicles through neighboring ports, particularly Port of Cotonou. The basic agreement we had with them is we give options. Can you collect duties on these vehicles and remit it to Nigeria? That's at the point of entry. Or can you escort these vehicles and hand them over to Nigerian customs authorities at the borders? These were the options that we play around. It was not possible for them to agree for collection of duty because of our system incompatibility. They talked about the fact that they don't have the required infrastructure. We needed to work out the legal framework and all of that. So, okay, fine. Can you collect all your charges when the vehicles arrive and bring them to the border and hand them over to the customs so that we can now collect our revenues? But this did not work with them. They honored that agreement at the beginning. After some time, they abandoned it. We went back to renegotiate and said, look, we have this agreement. We don't want to stop trade between us. We don't want this transit trade to stop. But it must be conducted in line with international law and agreements which you have freely signed. This has also not worked, and we are left with no option than to insist that Nigerian cargo should come to Nigerian ports.
Sometimes one wonders how it all started. We'll come back to asking you how the agents and the agencies can actually come in to bridge that gap between the Nigerian government or the Nigerian Customs Service and that of the Benin government. But first things first, if you look at it, once we were not there in Cotonou, how did it all start? Perhaps if you can take us through that.
Now, if we look at international trade, what people do when you have a cargo that is maritime bound, you have facilities for bringing them in through the seaports, and we had our seaports. Now, there has been a number of complaints regarding how user-friendly our ports are, talking about the charges, talking about corruption, talking about transparency, processes that are cumbersome, and all of that. Recall that in 2006, the federal government embarked on a wide series of ports reforms, including the concession of the ports to put them in private hands, so that our ports at least will look modern and they will have handling equipment comparable to those abroad and possibly in the region. We also had a number of customs reforms. The processes were automated. There was restructuring in the customs and all of that. And that has gone on for quite some time until the last 4 or 5 years, where there were so much complaints about the tariff. That there were complaints about the tariff, and because of that, people prefer to go to neighboring ports. What do they do in neighboring ports? They pay all the charges that are due on the vehicles, and then they now attempt to smuggle them across the borders, compromising customs and border officials, so that when they bring them in, the cars will sell less than those that are cleared through the seaports. The tariff on the cars have not changed. There are no differences between the tariff, but on one set of vehicles, duties are not paid. And so when they get them to the market, there is a marked differential between the prices of those cars like that and those that are cleared through the seaports. So the net result of this is that people tend to abandon the seaports, preference for the borders. So when I was listening to my brothers in Benin who said that cars are banned, it's not as if cars are banned completely. It is because people are not going to the seaports where we have the structures to insist on correct payment of duties.
The problem there is that we've also spoken to some of these agents, and they say it's because of the corruption within the customs and the ports area. They think that sometimes when you say to them that you get clearance within 48 hours, it's hardly ever so, making people to cut corners. Are you aware of that?
I fully understand this, and I share some of this. Yes, corruption can explain some of it, but corruption doesn't explain the entire problem. It does not make economic sense for anybody for you to pay correct duty charges in Benin Republic and then think that you will pay correct duty charges in Nigeria and still break even. The intention, ab initio, is that you will pay those charges, administrative charges in Benin Republic, and then smuggle them across the borders so that you can compromise the duty and sell at lower prices. So vehicles cleared in the ports will never come at the same landing price as vehicles cleared through the borders if customs duty is not paid on it. Yes, we're not running away from corruption. We heard about corruption. Corruption is not limited to the agencies. Clearance in the ports is a chain of reaction. It's a chain of actions. There is customs, there's terminal operators, there are the customs agents themselves or importers. So if an importer brings in a Mercedes SLK and describes it as a Toyota, that is an environment for corruption right away. So what are the options? The customs officer may either compromise, and then, allows it to go after collecting some money, or seize it. Either way, the importers will go out and still, make some kind of, complaints about time, about resources wasted, and all of that. So the problem is as much about corruption as it is about compliance. When people are compliant, when they bring in their things, and they declare it honestly, nobody has any business to ask them for any bribe. This is not to excuse excessiveness, arbitrariness, extortion tendencies of certain customs officers.